Now, Dawn here, are you really called Scary Airey?
I'll let you decide at the end of this.
Okay, let's see whether she's scary or not. But Dawn has 30 years of TV experience, having held senior positions at ITV, Channel 5, B-Sky B, 3 years at Yahoo, CEO of Getty Images for 3 years, lots of other stuff in between, but it would take up the entire panel session to be able to tell you about that. And also a member of the government's fan-led review of football. Brief overview there. Meanwhile, Kelly's been at the FA for over 30 years. But you've held very different roles within that time as well. So just tell us a little bit about yourself, Dawn, in terms of your role now and what you're bringing to it and what you're trying to achieve.
Okay, thank you. So I'm chair of the Women's Super League and the Women's Championship. And as chair, I'm responsible with the board for determining the strategy for the professional game and ensuring that that strategy is delivered. And so what are we trying to do? We're trying to be the best professional league in the world. But we're also trying to underpin that with, and you heard about it in the session earlier with Paul, we need to be not only financially sustainable. You know, I have big ambitions. You know, I don't do anything by halves. There's absolutely no reason, not a single reason I can think of as to why the women's professional game cannot be as big and as well remunerated as the men's game. Half of the women in the world are women, and in this market where football has been so embedded for so long, and the interest in the women's game is exploding, the monies that should be coming into this game, and eventually will come into this game, I think are going to be an immense, but it is a journey, and we are investing ahead of those returns. So the board is there to ensure that strategy is delivered. And there's a lot of, which I'm sure we'll go into, a lot of detail in terms of what we're involved in. I'm very fortunate insofar as a couple, I think most of my female board members are in this room, so they can heckle if they think I'm going off-piste in any shape or form. But it's to provide governance of the leagues, to ensure with the FA that there is the pathway so every little girl can aspire, if that's what they can play football, and if they want to be a professional football, potentially have an opportunity of doing so.
Strong start, Dawn. Strong start. Kelly, your role now, what exactly does that involve? What are you trying to achieve?
So I was previously Director of Development for the FA before this role, so children's grassroots football, so very different. Martin Glenn, who's our Chief Executive at the time, asked me to come in and look at being Director of the Women's Professional Game and to undergo a sort of transformational change project. So came in, you know, at that point, it was sort of minus 7 million business. It was 7 million being invested by the FA into supporting the clubs and the academies. And there wasn't a strategy for growth. I think the big thing that we've sort of brought really is to change the level of ambition around the women's game. So first of all, we sort of changed the governance. We thought it was really important we have a collaborative board with FA, with independent people, with great expertise to help us drive the women's game forward, with the clubs from the Super League and the Championship. So we come together and we build out a strategy for change. We've got a big ambitious headline in that strategy, a big ambition to develop the best women's league in the world. And I think that alongside our higher purpose, wanting to inspire positive change, I think really sort of mobilises, you know, the clubs, our stakeholders, and the internal team to really kind of drive forward. We talked quite a bit about international football. We work collaboratively with our partners internationally, but we also benchmark ourselves. So, you know, we want to be the best league in the world. Where are we at? Whether that's attendances, its audiences, its revenue. You know, where are we at in terms of that ambition to be the best league in the world? And I think that's really helped sort of mobilise growth. We subsequently brought in Barclays as the title partner, and then we were able to go and do the deal with the BBC and Sky, which has sort of transformed audiences and keep building from there. So, yeah, 3.5 years in, fabulous role to be involved in something that's really sort of at the cutting edge, I suppose, of women's sport and sport and football, and seeing it undergo such tremendous growth. And then I'm sure we'll touch on, alongside that, we've been saying, okay, well, what is the right ownership model for this league going forward? We don't see it sitting in the FA. What is the right ownership model for it? The FA is an investor in it. It's created it. It's invested in it. It's developed it. But long term, obviously, it needs to come out of the FA and have the right ownership and governance, absolutely fly and go on the next part of the journey, which is, you know, commercial growth alongside absolutely supporting quality of the product and the welfare of the players.
Yeah, we certainly will come on to that side of things. But just before we come back to Dawn, how much did the Lionesses winning here last July help your cause? Because you're not directly involved with that, of course, but what did it do in terms of opening doors, changing mindsets of the people that you're dealing with?
Massive, really. It's funny, actually, because we're at the game, and we were talking about it a little bit earlier. It was the most incredible moment, but I was also just sort of standing there as the clock ticked down, thinking, wow, we're under massive pressure now as the Super League and the Championship to make sure that we capitalise on this incredible moment for the game. But that work had been going on for months and months, whether it was the legacy work by the team that I think I hear somewhere that were driving the overall legacy for the game, but in terms of WSL and Championship team, working with the clubs to make sure we were ready when we came back, whether that was, it was about putting our biggest games in the best slots, it was about encouraging the clubs to put the games in main stadia, it was about trying to find the best slots for TV, it was about increasing our investment in marketing, encouraging the clubs to increase their capability and their investment in marketing so that we were ready to capitalise on that moment to drive attendances and drive audiences. And we've seen an absolutely record-breaking season across the Super League and the Championship, averaging around 6,000 and 1,000, a game for the two top tiers, which is massively up. Of course, there's still much more growth to do. And some of the biggest audiences through Sky and BBC that we've seen in sport, 16 million unique people watching the WSL this year, 8.4 million.
16 million?
Yeah, 8.4 million of which do not watch the Premier League. So I'm sure we'll talk about the partnership with Sky and the BBC and prioritising really reach over revenue, but wanting to absolutely drive both. And I think you can see, the fantastic job Sky have done in terms of its delivery, and also the BBC. And of course, that free-to-air, I think, has probably helped to bring some of those new fans into the game. So it's not just about converting existing. It's about, bringing new fans to football and what that can do in terms of future commercial growth.
You lot don't need to go home till about 11 o'clock, do you? Because we've got so much, oh my God, we've got so much to race through, so much that Kelly's just touched on there. You've both independently talked about wanting to be the best league in the world. I was in America last week where NWSL want to be the best league in the world, and you touched there on what does that mean? Are you talking about financially? Are you talking about having tens of thousands of bums on seats every week? Are you talking about being able to attract the best players in the world? Because a lot of them will go where they're going to get the best contracts. And not only that, we know that, but how do you quantify that?
We'll do our double act. It's all of that. I would just say about the Euro, if I can just, before we answer that question on the Euros, the winning of the Euros, it wasn't by accident. The FA had a very clear strategy for women's and girls football that was 21 to 24 that included winning a major tournament. So it was absolutely and utterly on strategy. And then it was, as Kelly said, a huge amount of detailed investment and work that got us to that point. And of course, there was another big inflection point in the game before that, which was 2019, I think the semi-finals and the Euros down in Lyon against when the Lionesses were playing and alas lost against America. But that saw a huge peak in interest. And the next peak in interest, of course, is going to happen very, very soon at the World Cup. Anyway, I digress a little. So what does the best league in the world mean? And I'm going to be really straightforward, which is to be the best league in any sport, you've got to be commercially successful. And the women's game has to be commercially successful. It doesn't have to be, it's not a question of breaking even, it's about making money. Because the more money you make, the more money you invest back into that game. But it's not about replicating the men's game. It's about doing things differently. It's about sharing all those values that you've talked about over the last 2 days that make this game and the experience distinctive. So the most successful professional league in the world, I'm not confining it to football, the most successful professional league in the world will have extraordinary engagement. Will it have the highest attendances? Will be the most watched in the world? Will attract the best athletes? And will actually have fantastic investment in the game. That is for us what the best league in the world is. I don't know if I've left anything out, Kelly.
No, absolutely spot on. I think it starts, isn't it, with the product, you know, and part of that is wanting to be able to attract some of the best players in the world, the Sam Kerrs of this world, the Miedemars, that add so much that the fans want to go and see. And then alongside that, it's absolutely developing English talent, not just for England, but because, you know, fans want to see, you know, local players and players that they can relate to, have come through their communities and through their talent system coming through as well. So that blend of world-class talent and English talent. And you know, we know, and we talked about it earlier, there's still more to do to develop the talent pathway and diversify the talent pathway. And that work is really critical, and we need more investment in that area. And I'm sure it's something that Karen Carney will pick up in the review. Well, I'm sure we'll probably talk about how I think, you know, as part of making the Women's Super League and the Championship absolutely fly, we need to invest ahead of revenue. Talent pathway is one of those areas. We were sort of gawping at the back when Jane gave the numbers. Was it 10 billion or something? 2 billion. 2 billion invested into male academies, and the budget and investment for women's academies at the moment is 3 to 5 million, depending on whether you count the emerging talent centres. So there's a massive gulf. So there's still lots to do in terms of the quality of the product, but it starts with that, and then it's absolutely about monetising it for, you know, sustainability.
Okay, well, let's crack on then with the next stage. You have always said over the years, Kelly, about, well, you know, we are guardians of the game, you know, grassroots, etc. We are not a commercial entity as such, not for profit, etc. Women's football needs to fly now. Having spoken to WSL clubs, they are straining at the leash. They want to fly, they want to invest, they want to move on to the next level. What does this new company look like, the new co? What's happening next? Come on, don't be shy, we're all dying to know. When, how, who's paying what, who's going to be in charge, what's it going to look like? Please tell us, thanks.
Yeah, no, well, I'm sure we can do a double act on this one as well. I don't mind kicking off. So first of all, you know, we've all agreed that it doesn't sit in the FA long term. The FA is, you know, from grassroots to England's got masses of sort of priorities across the whole of the game, and it also regulates the game, so there's that sort of natural conflict. So the plan is for it to come out the FA. We're working with the clubs on it being club owned by 2024. So a similar model in that sense to the Premier League and the EFL, where the member clubs of the Barclays Women's Super League and the Barclays Women's Championship would own that. So those discussions are ongoing really around what the governance looks like around that, what the composition of the board is in terms of best practice governance, what gets devolved to the clubs to decide, all of that kind of detail, what's in the golden share that protects, I suppose, the FA and the whole women's game as the leagues move out. So some of that detail is being worked through, but we had all the chief executives in a meeting in London earlier this year, and there was an absolute commitment that by summer 2024 it would be club owned. And then, of course, alongside that, which I think is really important, is that as part of that strategy, where it does need more investment, is that there be a dedicated executive structure to really help drive those leagues forward. And of course, at the moment, we've got a core team in the FA, but we have people from across the FA that have got multiple priorities who are doing a brilliant job for the Super League and the Championship, but have also got Men's FA Cup, Men's and Women's England, Women's FA Cup, etc., etc. So it gives a real chance to have more capacity, more capability to really take those leagues on to its next stage of development.
You covered it.
You did nail it, Kelly, but there'll still be question marks as to what it's going to look like. I mean, there's been talk over the years about the Premier League potentially taking it over because we know how that works. We know they have a lot more money than women's football has. We know that they have some of the women's teams. Some could be doing a heck of a lot more. Where are they? I'm not going to name names, but I'd love to. Did those discussions take place? How far did they get? How keen were they? And how close were you?
So you're all our best friends, aren't you? We're locked in. And this is Chatham House rules. So I'm going to tell you the truth, the whole truth. No, I'm not. I'm not going to tell you lies. I'm not going to tell you everything because obviously one can't because we're in the process still, as Kelly said, of working through a hell of a lot of detail. But of course we would talk to the Premier League. Of course we would. Because we have quite a lot of our clubs, in fact, the majority of clubs are associated with a Premier League club. The Premier League is an extraordinarily successful. They're the most successful league in the world, and they do many, many, many things right. And as we heard, we've heard today, the amount of broadcast revenue they get is 99% more than we get for the women's game. They're doing something very, very right. So why don't we just give it to them and say, well, actually, you know what? You're not a governing body. You can have the Women's Super League and the Women's Championship. Well, not all of our clubs are associated with Premier League clubs. Some of the championships. We won 2 leagues. The Premier League runs 1 league. We have that jeopardy. I mean, there isn't a Premier League. You can obviously go down to the Championship, but they're concerned only with the Premier League. And so we're looking at ways in which we can harness many, many of the great skills that are in the Premier League, that couple it with what we have within the NewCo, without necessarily the Premier League owning the whole thing. But it's an active debate as to what the governance is. But the ownership is going to be the clubs. The clubs own these 2 leagues. The 24 clubs own these leagues. They are not all Premier League clubs. And there is some concern that we've talked, it's been touched upon today already about sort of the polarisation. The big clubs, the top 6 that do so well, continue to do that, and you're not actually looking after what's going on necessarily in the lower championships. And you want that in the lower league, when you want that to be thriving, because you want that jeopardy, but you also want, all of those skills and expertise are going to fuel up the pyramid. So it's conversations are very active, very, very, very active with the Premier League, as of course they would be. We share a commonality of ownership, but I don't think it's about to become the WSL and the Women's Championship completely owned and run by the Premier League. So that's where we are.
So it's not. Can you tell us any more about the process, the next steps of the new company? You said by 2024, and you've got Nikki Doucette, who's come in, who's a former Nike director. And what's she doing? What's her role at the moment?
She's working as an independent consultant, and as Kelly referred to a moment ago, that we have the active engagement now of the chief executives, a subgroup of the chief executives of both leagues, who are helping, who are working with the FA and themselves to work out actually what is the best structure for this game going forward, that realises all the potential that we've been talking about. And we're working on a nuances to a revision to the existing strategy that we have. How do we revise and optimise that? And what's the business plan that goes alongside that to get the clubs comfortable with the investment that they're having to make? Now, clubs have been investing in the women's game for a long, long, long time. I mean, at varying degrees and varying levels, and I'm not at liberty to tell you, but Paul can tell me, if he so wishes, how much money that Brighton Ladies loses, or it might actually break even. I suspect it loses money, and certainly most of the top Premier League clubs that have clubs in the Women's Super League are running those games, running those teams at a substantial loss. They're running businesses. So at some stage, they want to know that that investment is going to give a return. So we're working on, okay, what is the strategy that delivers us at least a vision of where this game could break even, if not going to profit. Now, I could be a bit provocative here, so I'm going to be. So for those of you who've run businesses, and I suspect there's quite a few of you in this room, when you start out, and again Paul talked about this, is you often run businesses for a while at a loss with the view that eventually you're going to get to break even, you're going to get sort of cash positive, but also you're creating an asset. And what I would argue is actually the women, that if you're a Premier League club, having a women's club alongside, so you have two first teams, a men's team and a women's team, that delivers real capital asset value to you. So that when you trade, when you're a Manchester United up for sale, when you're a Chelsea up for sale, you've got a really strong women's team. It might not be making money, but the potential and the brand value and the cachet and the importance of it to future audiences can deliver you immense value when you actually sell your company. So I want to look, I always sort of challenge companies with, and I understand it. I understand when you're accountable to a board with, it's not just about the profit now and the profit in 5-10 years' time. It's also about the brand that you are building, the asset value that you're building that's going to give capital value when you sell your business. Not that all football clubs are traded, but most of them are on a reasonably regular cycle.
And where do we stand, Kelly, on the bottleneck, if you like, lower down the tiers? Because it's easy to look at the WSL and the Championship, but just a couple of seasons ago, you had Southampton and Wolves 8 and 9 points clear, having won their respective North and Southern Premier tiers, then meeting in a playoff, 1 goal in it after a red card. Wolves lost, Southampton won, great. And you had the team that lost, who were prepared, I know for a fact, to invest a huge amount of money in their women's team if they'd have got up to the Championship. They lost that playoff, having had a player sent off. They lost it 1-0, and they're still stuck there trying to get back up. So I know that in years gone by, you've been putting measures in place because you want sustainability. You only want one team to come up to make sure that that team is the best place to thrive. But at the same time, some might say, well, that's actually hampering progress. What's being done about that? Is there likely to be a change in the structure in future so that, as long as they meet the criteria, of course, the teams willing to invest and the ones who want to move to better stadia and go full-time professional are able to do so and thrive?
Great question, topical question. So we've commissioned 21st Group to work with work with the FA and the board to look at the sort of the optimal structure and competition format for the WSL, the Championship, and tiers 3 and 4. And what we're trying to look at is, to answer your question, is what's the right amount of movement? What short term, when are we going to fix the issue that I think is fundamentally unfair and does need, and everybody's telling us in the review needs fixing, which is that tier 3 is the only level, I think, in the men's national league system and the women's pyramid where you win your league and don't go up. So we've got to fix that, and we're having that conversation right now internally and at the relevant boards about what and when on that. So absolutely looking at that right now. And then there's the bit that's probably going to take a little bit longer, which is what's the optimal calendar to player-centred, but the optimal calendar to really sort of transform, to maximise fan engagement and interest in the tiers of women's football. You know, what's the right number of clubs? What's the right promotion and relegation, both for movement but also to increase jeopardy? We have quite a few dead rubber games because of one up, one down. And is that the best when you're trying to really drive fan engagement and fandom? And then longer term, you know, what do we do with the League Cup at the moment? It's in sort of group games and then knockout. So, you know, what is the optimal calendar across that, and what's the right movement up and down the pyramid? So all of that's sort of being looked at, and they'll be fed into the CEO strategy group and to the new strategy. But yeah, absolutely, I think it's really important we've got the right movement. You know, we want clubs to invest all the way down. Lots of clubs have come up to you recently. Kelly, we're massively increasing our investment in the women's game, but we can't see how we get up. You know, you blow it in a game and we can't get up, and is that right? Is that fair? Because we don't, we're passionate, and obviously our role is to drive the Barclays Women's Super League and the Championship forward, but we're really passionate about the whole game and the whole pyramid, and so we've got to make, incentivise investment in all of that by opening it up. So some big decisions, I think, for the women's game, broader than our area, over the next few months. Yeah,
because you didn't used to have those conversations with clubs going, we want to invest, why won't you let us get promoted? It was the complete opposite. It was, you can't meet the criteria, so that was an issue. So at least we take positive out of that. I'm really conscious of time, and I really want you guys to be able to have your questions, because we've only got 15 minutes left. So if I can just do slightly quick fire, if that's okay. And these are big topics. Nia, I'm not sure if Nia's still here, mentioned about referees. In the near future, is there a situation about referees going full-time? I commentated on a game the other day where there's not a criticism at all of the referee, by the way, but the reality was 45-year-old full-time management consultant was trying to keep up with 19-year-old, and she did a perfectly good job of it, but she's full-time working in her job, and then at the weekend is trying to keep up with these players. Is that, yes, we keep talking about investment and the money has to come from somewhere, but is somebody actively going out and identifying companies to try and sponsor referees in themselves to go, right, you're in charge of paying for the full-time model of referees, and we're going to big you up and your name's going to be everywhere, whether it's a glasses making company or whatever. Is somebody actively pursuing that?
Yes, EA Sports have partnered with us, through PGMOL. So very quick answer is, when we did the TV deal, we top sliced around £1 million a year of revenue to put into PGMOL, so that our elite referees, for the first time, some of them are on part-time contracts, but as you know, they're not fully professional, but the first time, the right sports science, the right coaching, the right mentoring, the right analysis. Every single decision and non-decision is scrutinised. They get the vast, vast majority right, by the way. As more money comes in, sure, on the list of things that we want to invest in as revenues come in is professional referees. It's also VAR, whether it's VAR or VAR-like, because VAR is hellishly expensive. But also technology. At the end of the day, even with professional referees, it happens like this. Decisions all the time, non-decision decisions, have got to be made. They're not going to get them all right. It's just absolutely impossible. And therefore, I think all you want really is, I'm sure the managers want every single decision to be right. We really want, I think, and what Nia's saying is the game deciding decisions have got to be right. And
you're going to give referees the best chance to get them right.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, some technology help to check back, was that goal significantly offside, or was that a penalty? Those big game-changing ones would be great to have some technology to support them as well. So yes, it's on the list as more investment comes in.
Oh my God, we're running out of time. But main stadia, because women's football is growing at an exponential rate, but it's coming from a position of trying to find its way amongst this, which is men's football, because it came first and it was here, and we're all trying to fit in with the slots. You're pointing at Dawn onto it. But for example, I got a bit of stick on Twitter for suggesting, having gone up to an Everton women's game where they play on a park with some stands. Realistically, that is what it is. And wouldn't it be great if Liverpool and Everton had their own women-only hub, which on a match day was red and on Everton's match day was blue? But do they not want to? Is anyone having these conversations? Is that unrealistic? Talk, Dawn.
I don't know if it's unrealistic. It's certainly an aspiration, because if you were saying you've got a world-class product, it's got to take place in a world-class stage. That doesn't mean to say it should be in all the men's stadia. Some of them are. We can fill the big stadium for the biggest matches, but actually there's a different probably size and style and access of stadia for families. For young kids to be able to get your buggy in with you if you want to bring your child. There are very discrete nuances. We do need investment in stadium, and but it's a massive investment at every level. Just Kelly talking about, we haven't got full-time professional us, we can't afford it. We're now talking about capital investment of multi-millions, tens of millions of pounds. Again, we've just got to get it's all. Everything is interdependent. Ideally, yes, we will have dedicated stadium for women, but in the meantime, we're quite happy to get into the men's games into the men's stadia on a more regular basis, which, to be honest, for women's weekends and key derbies, we are actually doing, and we're filling. Keeping it short, you said one short for our answer.
Yeah, and the broadcast deal ends next season. What's happening? How are the negotiations going? And
well, you know, you really, of course, Sky, potent. We're literally just about to go out to market, so it's too soon to say, and it's from 24-25, you know, and there's been a step change in the game's performance in the ratings. I mean, literally, you know, double the numbers on the BBC. I think it's 70% up on Sky. The audience is younger than the men's audience. I mean, every single metric of engagement, it's going through the roof. So, you know, our hopes are that we will have a terrific broadcast next deal. But no matter how good the product is, you need competition. So actually, the monies that we get for the broadcast deal will be completely dependent on the market. Now, the good thing and the bad thing maybe for Sky is there's a bit more competition, which we've got, you know, Discovery now with their new product TNT. There's Viaplay. So there's some big, and the streamers are beginning finally to show interest in sport. So we're hoping that we're going to have a pretty stellar broadcast process, but it'll be determined by the market. It'll be determined.
And can we have different packages?
There's always different packages.
Yeah,
there's always different packages. It gets presented. You do an invitation to tender. You dice up the packages to make it as attractive as possible to get competitive tension into the game, and also so that you have, as Kelly touched upon earlier, which is really important. A really important part of our strategy, because last time when we went to market, if we just did a pay deal, and believe me, the pay operators would have quite liked just a pay deal, we wouldn't have the reach, and we want everybody to be able to see the game. And only 50% of the audience, you know, the population does have Sky. So that reach, the reach and revenue is clutch control, and I suspect it will be clutch control again as we go into this right cycle, because we want exposure. We want everybody to be able to see women's football in some shape or form, but we also want the money, and the money doesn't really come from the free-to-air broadcasters. It comes from the pay broadcasters, and what they want is a higher degree of exclusivity. But it's going to be fascinating, and we're sort of interested to see how the EFL lands in terms of where their packages go and where those games go. We're interested to see, because the Premier League will be out in the market at the end of the year, and we're aiming to get in between the two and get these rights placed.
Yeah, and the other
are we particularly interested in how the EFL does, because we're beating them in the averages? Or?
That's true. Yeah. How much did the EFL was it go for last time?
It's a lot of noughts.
Yeah, exactly. A hell of a lot more money than us. So.
And the other big thing about women's football, and as I noticed when I commentate on Sky at 11:30 on a Saturday morning or 6:45 on a Sunday night,
we know.
is slots.
Yeah,
slots. And I always try and defend Sky or whoever, because it's not easy. There aren't just free slots available just to focus purely on women's football when men's football's not playing. Because, as I keep repeating, men's football's here first, had all the advantages, they've done their thing, and now we're trying to show everybody that, hey, there is a market, a strong market. So, Kelly, what about 3 o'clock on Saturdays, and what about abolishing that whole ban?
Yes, please. Thanks. There's a quick fire answer. Yeah, so Article 48, blocked hours, we think the women's game should be exempt from that. It was written for men's football, it's triggered by men's football. We would love that 3 o'clock slot. We're having those discussions with the game. It's difficult to find slots. We're trying to revert, you know, women's game became fully professional only in 2018. Now we're trying to reverse back into this massively crowded men's football, 150 years. You know, we know if we go up against the Premier League, it's going to really hit our audience figures. So trying to find those slots away is tricky. 3 o'clock, I think, gives us a great opportunity. I know 6:45, I know there's sort of perception that it can be challenging with attendances, and we have to take fans' views into consideration, and they do talk, the fan groups, you know, rightly talk about it at our fan group forum. But that does deliver some really great audiences for Sky, and and the Sunday slots on the B are really working well across BBC One, BBC Two. But that 3 o'clock Saturday would be terrific for us.
And what's the process? Who has the say-so as to whether they release the...
I think the football stakeholders will have to agree.
Sorry, who are they? Sorry, in our language, who are they?
PLEFL, FA, and then make representation to AFA about women's game being exempt. So there's some tricky hurdles to jump, but it is one way of trying to find a slot that where in this country you can't stream live men's football.
Yeah, but I have absolutely no doubt, have not a scintilla of doubt that the men's game absolutely and utterly wouldn't want us in that slot. They go, we are, especially with the amount of EFL games that are probably going to be turned on any minute, they want those. They say, our calendar is so busy ourselves, we want that slot, and actually they get the money. So it will be absolutely, I think, transformational and extraordinary if a decision was made, and it would be seen to be a brave decision to say, Article 48, we are one of the very few federations actually that maintain it. I think there's an awful lot of others who do play at 3 o'clock on a Saturday. We actively choose to keep it in this country. If it was lifted only for women, strikes me that that's maybe just a small step forward to the parity that we deserve, having not been allowed to play in men's stadiums for 50 years. So we'll try, Kelly, won't we? Yeah.
Is this what perhaps people need to be reminded of, the fact that things are only the way they are because of male dominance of men saying women can't play? And we don't like to keep banging on about the ban. We don't like to, but you kind of have to remind people that's the only reason why women aren't as far forward as men are. So your conversation, Dawn, I'm backing you to go there with your leather jacket, with a microphone, to stand up in front of them. Which you can use the microphone that way if you like. But to represent that viewpoint, that actually this is the only reason that we are scrabbling around for slots is because you guys got there first and took them all.
Nothing to add, I agree.
Okay, just asking. Right, I must ask if anybody has any questions. We have 3 minutes left. Any quick fire?
Remember, between questions are drinks out there, so just
yes.
Just saying, folks.
And please all stay for the drinks, because that's where we get to all mingle and swap notes, etc. So please, yes, quick fire questions and answers.
Considering what's next in women's football, when it's Australia, and the coverage and the visibility of the game during that time, and what, if there's any consideration from yourselves in how to best keep that engagement here visible when the games will likely be 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning here, and
because we are becoming a nation obsessed with women's football, we're going to get up early and we're going to watch it.
yeah.
And I think for those people crazy enough not to get up early to watch it, of course, all the content on social, the highlight clips, all of that, is hugely important, so that people can have access to as much of it as they want whenever they want.
And it's great that the organisations like the free lionesses have put the packages together for people to be able to go and have that ability to actually go there. It is quite far away, considering we've had such success in this country, and now it's halfway around the world. It's a big challenge, I can imagine.
Yeah, but for that part of the world, it's fantastic, and it needs to build there back to we can say we're focusing on on English women's football, but actually it's a global movement, and so we have to spread the opportunity.
One quick final one, if there is time. If not, we're going to finish in a moment, not just yet. Just to add, breaking news, Women's FA Cup final at this very stadium, Sunday 14th of May, has already sold 43,000 tickets before the quarter-finals have even been played. Now, my money's on 43,000 Lewis fans have bought up those tickets. Because, is that right? Because they reckon they're going to smash Man United at the weekend. They're going to trounce the semi-finalists, and then they're going to be Bosch back here in the final.
Go on, Maggie.
With the cake, there has been a theme. There absolutely has been a theme of cake. So I think this time next year, so all WSL matches, can we please have more cake for fans and journalists, and definitely for commentators, and for the women's football conference here at WIF next season, Barclays, can we have some cake as well? Thank you very much. And can we stop with the gratitude? That's been another theme. We've all been a little bit grateful in women's football and women working in football, grateful to have a platform, grateful to be allowed to hold a microphone, grateful to work in the men's game, what have you. And as Dawn said, perhaps we need to just go in there and just tell them what's what and demand.
It's our time, it's our century. We've been waiting a long time for this, ladies, okay? So, we continue to fight the good fight, but honestly, I see nothing but extraordinary investment in this game, extraordinary engagement. And I have to say, I mean, I'm going back to, and you probably touched on this before, when the Lionesses won the Euros, sent the letter to, it was Liz Truss, wasn't he? Whoever the Prime Minister was at the time.
It was that day, was it?
It's outrageous.
It was Liz Truss for those 2 weeks.
That's right, yeah. That there isn't sort of compulsory sport and girls don't have the opportunity to play football in schools, and that has already changed. That's extraordinarily socially responsible, intelligent women realising that they're involved not just in a sport, but they're involved in a movement, and that they are sort of leading the way, and they're going to use the voice and the platform that they have for social good and things that they believe in and are passionate about. I think that is extraordinary. Brands should be getting behind that lock, stock and barrel. And if they're not, we need to decide we all have the ability to decide where we're going to spend our money. We need to get brands and far more commercial support into this game. But this is just the beginning. I'm so excited. I have a 12-year-old daughter who wants to play for Man City. Sorry, Brentford, I know she's on your training course. Play for Man City and be a Lioness. And I don't want to disabuse her of that ability. I think, that's what I want every little girl to do. If they want a career in sport, you can have a career in sport as an athlete or behind the scenes. And there's an immense amount of opportunity and money to be made.
Okay. Thank you.